Hello, everyone. My name is Lionel Sander from Pembroke Publishers, and thanks for joining us this evening for our webinar. Before we get started, though, I would just like you to know that Pembroke Publishers' head office is situated upon the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of Scugog, Hiawatha First Nation, Alderville First Nation, and the Métis Nation. The treaty covering this area of land in Toronto, Ontario, is collectively known as the Williams Treaties of 1923. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the Wasanic people on whose traditional territory I live, work, and learn. The Wasanic people have lived and worked on this land since time immemorial. And I wish to recognize the significant contributions of Indigenous peoples across this land. We seek a new relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, one based in honor and deep respect. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. And just before I do that, I will mention that today our format is that we'll have two speakers, each taking roughly about 20 minutes to 25 minutes, with a little bit of time for questions at the end of each presentation, as well at the very end if we have the time. So if you do have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to drop them into the chat, and I will monitor the chat and bring that forward at the appropriate times. I know today that we have two educators with a wealth of experience and a passion for education, because I've heard them speak many times before. And if you are new to the profession, I would encourage you to ask any question that you would like. It's an exciting start to a career, and you have two experts here today who will happily share their experiences in any way that they can. And so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Kathleen Gould Lundy, or I guess I call you Kathy now, don't I? Is that okay now?
Yeah, that's right.
Kathy, if you have not heard Kathy speak before, she's a teacher, a consultant, a popular speaker, and an educational leader in joining us here today. She's an author of many books for teachers. She's involved in the development of curriculum documents and videos around many aspects of learning. But I would say, I don't know if this is a too big of a generalization or too narrow, Kathy, but there's something about sort of your philosophy and your beliefs in education that it's about the relationships. It's about the kids in your class. And whenever you speak, I just sort of feel like I'm being transported to your classroom, and that I matter, that everyone that you talk to matters, and you connect with them, and your messages are around that. And I found in a blog posting a similar thought, someone saying that I was one of the fortunate educators to have been taught by Kathleen Gould Lundy, and to have had to experience the magic that happens in her classrooms. And I know education isn't magic, but there is when that person that we call the teacher is there, and they make you feel important and engaged. That is magic. So I'm looking forward to the next little bit of time of hearing you speak. And with that, I'll pass the virtual mic over to you and get your slides up here for you.
Okay, well, thank you. And it's funny, welcome everyone. And I've been teaching for a long, long time, but I have to tell you that every single time I teach, I'm really nervous. So I'm nervous tonight. It's so crazy that, I've been around for a long time, and I've taught in many different kinds of contexts, but every single time I stand up to teach, I'm nervous. And in a way, if I'm speaking to you as new teachers, just expect that, and kind of go with it, because it's something that is part and parcel of the experience, and mainly because you don't know what's going to happen. And whether you're online doing it virtually or doing it face to face, it's always an experience for both you and the students. And so bear with me as my nerves kind of shift about here. I remember when I first began teaching, I was newly married as well, and August was not a good time in our relationship. I tell you, I was so anxious. I was married to a teacher as well. And he had been teaching for a lot longer than I had. So I found the days of August really, really difficult. And I remember Wimbledon was on, and I tried to plan my lessons and then relax by watching tennis, and just didn't work for me. So if you're feeling anxious, that's kind of part and parcel of the whole experience. And if you're worried that, by October you're going to look like this, you might, but you'll survive, and we'll all be there to help you get through it. So you're not alone. First day jitters are there. I remember my first day of school. I'm a Twitter nut, actually, and I love looking at pictures of first days of school. And, I found this picture of this kid, which I love so much. He's sort of standing there at the front door of his house. He has no idea, poor child, of what awaits him. But I remember feeling sort of the same kind of thing. I remember what I wore. I remember wanting to be successful in this first day. And I was new to Toronto. I was originally from Montreal. And the very first thing I had to do as a teacher was to do all the home housekeeping kind of things. And I had to hand out TTC cards for the Toronto Transit Commission. I didn't even know what the TTC was. And I always remember at the back of the classroom in grade 9 English, I remember there was this great kid, Stuart Lash, who said, "Relax, miss, you're not going to last very long if you're this nervous." And I was shaking, and I sort of continued to shake throughout the day. So Stuart Lash, I was figuring out today, he must be 58. Hopefully he's still managing to get through life, but I remember him so well saying that to me. And he was sort of tapping into what we know about teaching, that if it's anything at all, it's dynamic and authentic. People who don't teach don't know that you're actually in the moment all the time. It's interactive. It's messy. There's a reciprocity there. You're, batting the tennis ball back and forth. There's an uncertainty to teaching, which there should be. You need to go in there not knowing for sure, because then you're going to be really on your toes, like in the Wimbledon tennis matches. You need to be responsive, and, it's challenging, and it's so exciting. Like, I was thinking about you today as I was preparing to sort of get this on the road. And I thought, I'm kind of jealous that you're starting your first year of teaching, because you'll never forget it. Everybody has a story, and, things that worked, things that didn't, things you learned, people you met. Lionel was telling me this morning that, after his first day of teaching, he said to himself, I knew I picked the right profession. And I didn't feel that way, to be honest, after the first day, but eventually I did. The unexpectedness of teaching makes it the tricky part. And if anything teachers have learned over the last year and a half of the pandemic, online, offline, no line, what are we doing, is to expect the unexpected. I gave a talk to at the end of the year, last year, to Ottawa teachers and first year teachers, and said, the word pivot became part of their vocabulary. Let's pivot around. Let's, try it this way, or let's, do something different. We have to figure out new ways of teaching. So expecting the unexpected is part and parcel of it. And I love this cartoon of the little girl who says to the principal, "I played school with my little brother last night, and let me tell you, I have a whole new appreciation of what you do." And, in fact, I think the public now is certainly in Canada have an understanding of just how complicated it is, and how difficult it is to teach well, especially in this environment. And, when you begin something that is challenging, this is sort of very contemporary, but you're often told, you've got this, you can do this. And I have a daughter-in-law who's a paramedic, and she's pregnant with twins, and until recently was on the truck driving the ambulance, and ended up at an emergency situation where she had to be hoisted up the side of a building with her partner to rescue a construction worker who'd had a difficulty. And she was there after having been hoisted up to the 18th floor. And the construction workers are all sort of standing around her saying, we can help you. And she said to them, "We've got this." And I said to her, "Did you really?" And she said, "Yeah, because I've had, 20 years of experience. So I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what we had to do together." But wonder if you don't feel that you have got this. I'm going to tell you a few things that I say to my teacher candidates at Oise and at York. You can't possibly know it all. You only learn how to teach by teaching and reading and taking courses, etc. But don't beat yourself up if you don't feel you don't know it all, because you can't possibly know it all. You're going to make mistakes, and you got to forgive yourself for that. You got to give yourself permission to learn by trying new things out, making errors, forgiving yourself, and starting out. My suggestions are reach out for help. And obviously you are. You're here tonight. You're doing professional development. You're saying to yourself, I need some inspiration. I need some practical ideas. And one of the things that I think Canadian education boards of education are doing so well are mentorship programs. So if you have a mentor, reach out to that person and work with that person. We didn't have that when I started teaching, but I did make a best friend who was fantastic because she didn't tell me always that I was doing a great job. She was pretty critical of some of the stuff I was trying to do. And that was helpful to me because you can't know it all. You have to say to yourself, I'm going to try this tomorrow and see how it goes. The most important thing, though, tonight and for the rest of your teaching career is to remember that you actually do make a difference. You wouldn't be in this profession unless you kind of thought that you might. But in fact, good teaching does make a difference in the lives of kids all over the world. And I mean good teaching. I mean teaching that is responsive, that is authentic, that is honest, that is creative. I worked for the Toronto Board of Education for years, and they used to have trucks that, drove through the city, and I'd be driving through the city too, going to all these schools. And on their motto was, good teachers make a difference. And they do. And all the research says that. And in fact, this year, as we were watching teachers pivot and do all the work that they were doing, everybody was impressed by, the kinds of work that teachers were doing that does make a difference, because teaching does matter. And people think, it's sort of romantic and lovely. and it doesn't look like this anymore. Some people really think that teaching is this, whereas in fact, it's more this. It's really about having students work together, respond to you and to what you're inviting them to learn in active, culturally responsive ways. So, one of the crucial things that you have to do as a first-year teacher is to get to know your kids so that you can actually create classrooms of possibility where every little voice, every single voice matters. And I always say to teachers, win kids over one at a time. This is a picture of a classroom that I worked in where there was a boys' reading club just outside of Toronto. And, there's all sorts of possible things that you, with all your strength and all your talents, will bring to a school and make possibilities happen. So don't forget that that's possible. it is a climb. I taught a master's course at OISE on the arts and urban schools. And one of my students, who's a fantastic grade 1 teacher, created this piece to represent sort of the climb that he experiences to integrate arts education to his work as a first year, as a grade 1 teacher. And it is a struggle, but it's so worth it in the end. So one of the things that tonight is about, and Larry's going to do a lot of practical stuff with you, is for you to think about your teaching self. You know, and I have something that I call in my book, Stand Up and Teach, the 6 C's of effective teaching. And they're simply this: having high expectations for everyone. You know, you walk into your classroom and you cannot have made assumptions before you go in there. And you don't listen to what other people are saying or telling you about this class, this grade, these kids, this community. We're not doing that. You're going to go in and you're going to have these high expectations for these kids. And as you work, you're going to establish inclusive and respectful environments so that you can engage the learner in interesting, relevant pedagogy and curriculum. You know, how do you engage them? How do you explore the material? You know, what do you get them to do? What am I going to do? What are they going to do? How am I going to move them on so that the learning is extended, so that it's deep? I'm doing a thing next week on reading for, you know, how do we get to deep reading, deep learning, deep understanding? And how do you evaluate fairly in a pretty unfair world, actually? So I have a little poll for you, and Lionel's going to set that up. We're going to do this really quickly. If I were to ask you which of the 6 E's is at this moment most challenging for you, which one would you pick? I'm just sort of interested. High expectations, establishing a community, engaging learners, exploring the material, extending the learning beyond the tinny and superficial, or evaluation and assessment. So we'll just take a look for a minute.
Kathy, you can see the results coming in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we've got it, you know, the exploration of the material in inventive ways that honor all learning styles is the essence of teaching. And how do you honor that learning that is happening, which is evaluating and assessing and giving feedback? So you know, the crux of the matter is that the only way that you're really going to come to terms with all this is to teach and learn, to go to professional development, to read as much as you can, etc. So I'm very conscious of time, so I'm just going to quickly just, you know, help you understand what this book that I've written is all about. It's very simple, but, you know, I do believe that you have to learn how to begin. And, you know, school shouldn't be a difficult place to be for you or for kids. And, you know, there are no disposable children in the world, as Mary Jean Gallagher, the Deputy Minister of Education, used to say. How do we ensure that kids feel that they're loved and honored and respected, and that they respect the work that you're doing with them? And on one of the pages in the beginning of the book is, you know, when I go into a classroom, I write up on the board, think, feel, speak, act. And I want us all to establish a community of learners where, you know, what are your thoughts about school? How do you feel about being here? How do you want to speak to me, to each other, to the group? And if something goes wrong, how are we going to act towards each other? So that's just a tiny little idea that you might want to try to build community in the classroom. Because I believe, and I think most of us know, that the heart is very vulnerable. And kids will come to school if they know they're going to be respected and that they will be heard. So one of the most important things that Larry and I do in our work is create these classrooms of conscience, where we work with kids and as a community to establish an understanding of how we can move forward as learners. You know, the way you talk to your students is important. I just was listening to Jacinda Ardern talk about how she's the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and how she dealt with the pandemic. And she said, I spoke to the people as if they were my family. You know, I spoke to them with respect. And the way in which you speak to kids in your classroom is so crucial. And you have to watch it. You know, you don't want that teacherly kind of thing happening, that where you think you have to have this power, where you have to be careful that you're authentic and honest and welcoming, etc. And you have to notice who is included and who isn't. And you have to shape your lessons. And I'm going to go really quickly because, Lionel, I know I'm sort of like 2 minutes to go, but you know, one of the things I've learned is that you have to have a sense of your students, and you have to spend time getting to know them so that they have a sense of themselves, that they walk away from your classroom, from the experience of you as teacher, feeling great about themselves. And you need to inculcate in yourself a sense of self, that I've got this, but that's going to take time, right? And that you have a sense of the community in which you live. This was the community in which I taught. You know, there's an urban community. That you don't make judgments about this community, that you reach out to it, that you embrace it, that you understand it, that you work with it, etc. I'm going to move on to just sort of the essence of the book, which is how to create lessons and units. There are teaching strategies there that some of you might know and some of you might want to learn about. One of the ways in which I work is I do a lot of active, up on your feet kind of stuff. I do a lot of questioning. I have students ask questions. We do a lot of interviewing. We do a lot of oral language work. But the dichotomy of teaching is simply this. On the one hand, you need to have a solid plan in front of you, and all of you at Teachers College learned how to make those plans. But on the other hand, you have to be prepared for the unexpected. You have to be able to change course on the spot, and that's what good teachers do. You go in there and I got to change. The second dichotomy is that you need to design lessons using backward design. You learned how to do this. You know, from the culminating task, you move backwards. But you also have to begin in really powerful ways. Like, how am I going to start this lesson? How am I going to arrest the attention of my students? How am I going to get them, right, with me? And then finally, you need to imagine how a lesson will unfold and be excited by the possibilities, but you also have to be practical in terms of time, space, content, materials, differentiated learning, and student response. I mean, it's one thing, but it's also the other. It's one thing, but it's also the other. In the book, there's 30 classroom management tips, which I love. I love doing a workshop on those because they're just simple little things that I've learned from hard mistakes. And so you can take a look at those. But your mentorship is important, you know, finding a friend. David Booth, Larry, and we are one of our best friends. He said, "How do you become a good teacher? You hang around good people. You hang around good people who are going to help you believe that you can make a difference." And I'm going to finish with just this story that I love so much. But a number of years ago, I went out to Saskatoon to do a workshop for first-year teachers and mentors. And it was a 2-day workshop. And the first night, the organizers had a great idea of having the workshop leaders, the first-year teachers, and their mentors all sit at a table. And I sat at a table with this fantastic veteran teacher and all these first-year teachers. And she talked brilliantly about all the stuff that she'd learned to do and gave them all sorts of ideas. And then she taught in a northern Saskatchewan community, a First Nations community, and her marriage fell apart, so she had to leave. And so she took her own children and got on the plane and said goodbye. And the community was devastated that she was leaving because she was extraordinary. And she said, "I looked out the window as we're going off the tarmac, and the community's running after me, after the plane." And I guess that's the image I'm going to leave you with, that you're going to have some bumps on the road, but in the end, you want the kids and the community and the parents and your colleagues running after you saying, "Don't go." Thanks very much.
Thanks, Kathy. That was great. I think I spent time reflecting on my first couple of days of teaching, and I should qualify that I knew I wanted to be a teacher since I was in grade 5. So when I finally got the chance to do it, that's really what I was saying, that okay, yeah, I made the right choice, because it's you spend all that time in university. You don't know until you're actually there in front of kids what it means. But I like a word you use there, and I know we just have a couple minutes, but I'd like to just maybe explore a little bit. And there's so many different ways to go. And you were trying to, I think, talk about sort of all the challenges of teaching, but also the balance it's in there. I don't think I've heard you use the word before, dichotomy. And you gave 3, but it seems to me that you could go on you could write a book about the dichotomies of teaching, like, everything you learned at university, and then all of a sudden, oh, what do you mean it doesn't go that way, right? Or, oh, you mean as the teacher, I just stand on the side and let the kids do things sometimes. Like, that seems like a big word that we don't spend a lot of time on. But did I just kind of pick that up, or is that an important word, dichotomy, when you're starting out?
Well, I think, we think teaching is one thing, but once we start teaching, we realize that it's multiple things.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go the way we think it's going to go, but we learn from that experience. And, we're told we need to do this, but actually we need to do that and this. There's so many ways and I've only learned that as I teach. When my first year of teaching, thank God we went out on strike after 6 weeks for 3.5 months. I was so happy. I was walking the picket line saying, thank you. Because I taught it all. I didn't know what I was doing. And, but the one thing that I did, challenged me a lot was timing and my response to kids who were difficult and who had troubled homes. And I was learning as I was going. Yeah. But one of the things that I did learn is that if you are vulnerable, if you appear to be both strong, there's another dichotomy, strong but vulnerable, kids will respect you. Yeah. And that word may be it. If that's, I know used of, you and they were talking about I wrote it down here, the think, feel, speak, and act, and, there it is, respected and safe. Those words, they're just not words you throw around, but it's that coming back to being authentic seems so important. Kids know when you're not. They can't, like I taught high school, And
Yeah.
if you weren't true, you lost them. I learned
That you did.
also.
Yeah. What was we should go back to that slide, 30 classroom management tips, because somewhere in there is, don't bluff it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
Oh
real.
no.
Share your power.
Yeah.
You know, if there is that power stuff happening in classrooms, and I mean, I learned that from the Brits, when I worked with British educators who often say to kids, would it be all right if we, would it be all right if we did it this way? How do you feel about that? So, and then I worked with this amazing teacher in Windsor a couple of years ago, who every day, grade 5, every day she would say to her kids, sit them down and say, this is what I'm thinking. Tell me what you're thinking. And they negotiate. The classroom is a negotiated space.
Yeah. I know Larry's waiting in the wings, but I just thought it might, with new folks going in September and starting, I don't think you sort of talked about it, but it was always alluded to, and that's what happens when you have a bad day in the beginning. What would be your advice you're the mentor, I've had a bad day, and I tried something, it failed miserably, it bombed. What should I be thinking as I'm driving home? Because it's not, I better get out of the profession, but what do you think you would say to that person that maybe they don't have that mentor, but they're going to have a rough day in the first month?
Yeah, I think you have to expect that those are going to be rough times. I mean, the other idea that I eventually learned to do with my own students is to go in the next day and say, whoa, but you might not feel comfortable doing that yet.
Yeah.
I think you have to, permission to forgive yourself, I think, and say, I'm learning on the job. I have to pick myself up and go back in and try something different.
Yeah. And we've all been there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much, Kathy. That was great. I think we could go on with this conversation much longer, but as I said, I know Larry's waiting. So I'll say thank you on behalf of everyone. And when you get a chance to sort of scan the comments that have come in, you'll see things from Jim saying teaching is learning to Pat calling you an awesome mentor and making some very nice comments about what you said. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us.
Thanks, Lyle.
Thanks. And folks, we'll just do a sort of a switch over here. But just so you have, I'm just doing a little quick offer that's being offered by Pembroke Publishers. If you click on the link to visit Pembroke Publishers, you can get $5 off on your next purchase, including Kathy's books, Stand Up and Teach. I realize I didn't put the code in there, so I will drop that in the chat once we get started in the next session. But what I'm going to do now is just close off this set of slides here, and I will set up to bring in our next presenter, and I'll introduce him, and we'll get started. I will check with the presenters, Gabriella, about the sharing of the slide decks, and include that in the email with the recording that says, or the email that comes out to say the recording is posted. If they're open with sharing, I'll put it all in a Google Drive or something and share that out with everyone. So just give me 1 second here, folks, and I will do that. And Larry, I'll do a quick sound check. You're there?
I'm here.
Perfect. Great. Okay. Well, now it's my pleasure to introduce our second speaker for today's webinar, and it's to my right, but it might be above or below you, depending on how our cameras are on our screen, is Larry Swartz, literacy and drama instructor at OISE, University of Toronto. I suspect many of you have heard Larry speak before and will know that he is a passionate educator, especially when it comes to children's literature, to reading. I've heard Larry now speak many times, and we've met through webinars during COVID, and I am every time amazed at his passion for children's literature, for reading. in terms of if you're looking to take a kind of an idea into your classrooms, this is the man you want to be listening to for the next little while. So Larry, it's great to have you back, and I'll pass the virtual mic over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kathy. I loved your words, and I love your slide images. You do it so brilliantly. So no wonder somebody wants those slides, because they're so powerful. And I think we are bookends to each other today, Kathy. Obviously, Kathy and I taught together, but we complement each other. My little chat is going to be about literacy, and I'm going to be talking about my book. But I also raised that question, how do we begin? And I have an overview of literacy. Kathy talked, her first slide was about August. So my first question to you is, have you had the August dream? Everybody who's been a teacher knows what that is, because if you haven't had it, you're going to get it. You might get it tonight. Don't phone me at 2 in the morning. Don't email me or text me. But the August dream is like you have 48 kids in your class, or you line up and all your, I had one last week that there wasn't one book in my classroom, and we had to go searching. And so that August dream is coming your way if it hasn't already. It's been coming my way for over 40 years. So I'm not apologizing for that, but be aware, and I'd love to hear your August dreams, because we all have stories. And that's the thing about this teaching business. You're going to have stories. If you're beginning next month or in the middle of the year, or whenever, you have so many stories. And that's what makes learning teaching, because those stories validate who we are and they provide data. This weekend, I spent with my family. I have nieces and nephews, and great nieces and nephews. And on Saturday, we were up at a hotel. And on Saturday morning, I took the little kids, the 6, 7, and 8-year-old, miniature golfing at this place. It was a total disaster. Poor Joshua was just rolling the ball and rolling the ball. He didn't even know what a golf club was. And Ayla, after hole number 3, she says, "This is stupid. My ball is stupid, and I'm not going to play anymore." So she was climbing the trees. Samantha sort of hung on there. And I turned to my nephew and I said, "I don't think I ever want to be a teacher." And of course, that's what it's about. You got to rise. Their parents were there, so they weren't interfering, but the kids were just being themselves. They were in the world of play. So I applauded that and I observed them. So that was total no classroom management, let me tell you, on all our parts. But I've been a classroom teacher I was 25 years in the Peel Board of Education, and now I teach teachers at OISE. My job is to teach literacy. Get 36 hours to teach literacy, reading, writing, and talking, spelling, and technology, and differentiation. 36 hours for a literacy class. So how do I frame that learning? But they're going to find it once they're in the classrooms. Of course, they're going to learn with the practical experience. And our resources and Pembroke books really are great supports for them. And that's what I'm going to chat about in a minute. But my last teaching experience was a grade 3, 4, 5 family grouping. I had some kids from grade 3, and then I took them into 4, etc. What an exciting way to leave the classroom before I bridged over to the OISE experience. And I got a letter in April from Natasha. I taught her in grade 2, 3, 4, and 5. "Mr. Swartz, do you remember me?" I said, "Natasha, how could I forget you?" And I certainly didn't forget it. I show her journal and notebooks every year in my writing program as well. And she says, "Can we please meet, because I owe you so much, Mr. Swartz." But you never know. You never know. That was one student. That was about 25 years later, and she sent me this beautiful email. You'll all get that email, and that's what's exciting about making a difference. My motto in the classroom, I had 2 banners. I had one on the east side that said, "Everyone is a teacher if we choose to let them be." I bought that at Scholastic. That was the banner that I did. Because I just wanted to know that I'm learning along with them. And my other banner was, "Ooh wee, ain't we a having fun?" And that came from a picture book. And I had Amy make that poster, that banner. It went about 8 feet long. And she made that banner. And I just wanted us to laugh and smile. And with Mr. Swartz, we laughed and smiled. I was intentional about it because my beginning theme, if you want, I did for the first 4 to 6 weeks, we did a humor unit. We read funny books. We told funny jokes. Their homework at that time was they had to watch a funny TV show and review it. Is that great homework? Well, it was my way of bringing media in, and that was in the 90s. But and we looked at funny stories. I read funny poetry. So that was a way for me to bring kids together and build community. So I'm just remembering that. So as you're beginning, and as I move into my little slideshow here, I know that as the beginning teachers, this was mine, so you have other questions, but I really worried and struggled. What is the first book I'm going to read aloud to my kids? What's going to bring them together? What's going to bring us? Are we going to do a funny one? Am I going to do a memoir? Is it one that's going to lead to some drama? Is it going to lead to some writing? What's the first book you're going to choose? Oh my God, I'd love to survey that, but I might get to hear it if you want to put that into the chat room. By the way, you're getting a book list from Larry at the end of this. My 2021 titles of picture books, novels, and nonfiction. And what's the first thing you want the students to write? I'm really intrigued with writing. In my 36 hours, I get like one class, maybe 1.5 class, besides the integration of writing, to talk about the writing process. One class, folks, out of 36 hours. So how are you going to organize your writing program? I always ask my teachers when they come back for practicum, can you describe the writing program? How would you describe the reading program? And the big question, Kathy and I wrote a book called Creating Caring Classrooms. How are you going to build community? We have a list of 36 ways to build community in your classroom in chapter 1. But bringing them together in a circle, playing a circle game is a great way to build community. It really matters. And folks, it takes a long time. You're not going to get there on day 1. You can have those rules posted on your anchor charts, but have the kids make the rules, not the rules, just the mandates and the mantra for our classroom. So, and the big question is, what are you going to wear on the first day? I always worried about that. Should I wear a tie? Should I wear a jacket? I had a principal in my first school, and all the men had to wear ties and jackets. So what are you going to wear? But what are you going to read is more important. I think we'll move right into the slideshow, Lionel. My book is called Better Reading Now. 50 ready-to-use teaching strategies to engage students, deepen comprehension, and nurture a love of reading. And preparing for this, I went through the book and I said, what am I going to show them in the short time that I have? I got 50 strategies for you for any book at any time, any grade level. And what is our goal? We want to engage the students, look at all the E-words that Kathy used. We want to explore and engage. Obviously, I have a focus for deepening comprehension, and our goal is to nurture a love of reading. They're with me for 10 months, and I hope I can build a passion for reading. So I do have a website, Dr. Larry recommends, if you ever need some book titles, and this slide will appear at the end as well. But my book's called Better Reading Now. So what's happening in the world now? There's the cover for you. What's happening in the world now? And I'll talk about that. I'll finish off with that. Very briefly, just on a practical level, next slide, Lionel. I divided into these chapters. So let's think about reading. And I love the active word of let's. So that's how I chose the title. Let's Read is about beginning reading and motivating reading. At the end of the year, where I asked my students, what are some questions that you have? And the one thing is, over and over again, my students in my courses, my teacher candidates, how do you motivate the kids to read? That's the number one if I had to rank them. So the chapter 1's about motivation and bringing in a literacy community. Chapter 2, Let's Think, is the comprehension strategies, and with examples there. Let's Write looks at the various kinds of writing and the genres of writing. The talk curriculum is something I'm really enjoying as part of my thesis work. So how do we build accountable talk? That's the 4th chapter. Let's Create moves into, I'll say, the arts and the creative experience, because you're not going to get a book by Larry Swartz that doesn't include the arts experiences. And Let's Inquire meets into inquiring about words, inquiring about the topics that we meet across the curriculum. That's the chapter overview. Next. So I went through and I said, what strategies am I going to do in my short little, and I better talk fast. So I got some sample strategies, tic-tac-tail, character journals. My very, 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 very best book report is when kids become a character in the journal. It's perspective writing. It can move into role playing when they become a character in a novel, when they become Augie from Wonder, they are demonstrating, they're retelling the story, and they're stepping into the shoes of the other. The picture book contest is an activity that I did at the beginning of the year where each kid read independently in groups, and that's how I built my daily read aloud. I was religious. I read aloud to the kids every single day. I would record the readings, and at the end of the week, we voted for our very favorite book. So multiply that times 180 days. They got a lot of read alouds from me, and then I moved it into poetry. Every single day in my class, we read a poem. It was called Poem of the Day. And here's the trick. The kids chose the poems. I did the month of September, and the rest of the year, every day a kid wrote a poem. So I called that the picture book contest with some criteria. We did funny books, as I say at the beginning of the year. Book pass, author study, text set, snippets. Is this a test? Interviewing and role, story theater, thinking stems, just the beginning, collaborative book experience. Well, if you're not sure what any of those terms, put them in the chat and I'll try and explain them before we go. But obviously, those are some sample strategies, practical ways to build engagement with reading. Next. Just so that you know each chapter, so each strategy begins with a quotation from experts. I describe it. What is this strategy? Why use it? What are the expectations? What are our goals? I provide teaching tips to help you make it work effectively. And then I give you demonstration with book literature. And my favorite thing always is giving book lists. So each strategy throughout the book has some book lists to provide mentor text for that activity. But the demonstration is the active part of the lesson. That is how the book works. Let's give a little taste of those. Next, Lionel. Oral narrative. I've used this quote, I think, in every one of my books. I went to a conference many years ago, the top conference in the Peel Board of Education, and this one just resonated. It's been on my shoulder. It's in my thesis. The best response to a story is to tell another story. So when we tell a story and the kids have a story, hey, that reminds me of something. In comprehension, we called it text to self, or maybe text to text. But when they make those connections, you know the book, you know you've got the right book. And every word is a story. If I asked you, get into groups and tell about your favorite vacation. How about a scar? Does anybody have stitches? Talk about your favorite birthdays. Have you ever won anything? What about seashore? When you hear that word, what story have you have to tell? And the trick is, do you have a story or do you know somebody who has the story? So if you want to build this circle of community, the best way, oral narrative is number one on my list. Lionel, I'm trying to get rid of, I'm not going to get rid of, but it's covering up my slides. Kathy's promos. Can you get rid of it?
It'll be on your slide. There should be a little X there.
Yeah, okay.
Remember, your mouse isn't working.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll make it work.
Sorry.
I don't want to get rid of Kat. Okay, so look at these book titles. Eric Walters, a dear friend of mine, wrote a book about a grandfather who passes away, and this girl throughout her journey of life, he sends her notes that he left with her. I'll always be with you. Who in your life will always be with you? And not just passing away, but maybe somebody you had to say goodbye to who moved away. There's so many stories. Here's the trick. I tell a story. I went into a grade 4 story, and I happened to tell a story about my nephew Solomon, who passed away of cancer. And my story inspired kids to tell stories of their relatives they missed who were always with them. And of course, they had told stories about goldfish and hamsters, etc. But they had stories about grandparents or saying goodbye to friends. Jacqueline Woodson book, easy. It's easy there. The lesson plan's in the title. Has anybody ever been kind to you? Have you been kind to anybody? This is a story about a girl who comes to this classroom, and the people abuse her. They don't treat her nicely, and then she moves away, and the teacher's determined to teach them about kindness. Oh, outside in resonates with our world today. Brilliant title, Looking at the World Outside. I'm stuck inside looking out. My friend Margie Wolf wrote a book of promise to talk about this is a way to introduce the Holocaust. And Your Name is a Song. Kathy and I know we share this lesson. Whether I stole it from her, she stole it from me, but we certainly stole it or borrowed it from our friend Valerie. My first week's activity is tell a story about your name. And I start with a picture book. Your name is a song. And I'm going to tell a story about my name, Larry Swartz, Swartz. And I always get Schwartz, and I have no problem with that. And I tell about how I got my name. And everybody has a name. Everybody has a story. And I've talked about this lesson, and it's just a powerful way to build community. You learn about identity and culture as each student shares a story. It might be a turn and talk, and the turn and talk prepares them as a circle. We're each going to tell a story, and then they move it into writing. Reading, write, and talk integration. Oral narrative, that's my number one gift to you today. Next. This is a graphic that I put in. It's one that gets them talking. So this one's with picture books. So I call it Tic-Tac-Tail. What is the title of the book? What's the first sentence of the book? Tell me about the author's name and the illustrator's name. I want them to know about text features. What's a sentence that you liked? If you could put this sketch in the book, what would you do? 3 interesting words. Let's look at vocabulary. My opinion of the book. I learned about. What did you learn by reading about this book? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about reading? What did you learn about the world? So the kids fill these in, and then like tic-tac-tail, they choose any 3, and that builds some discussion and moves them into from reading into talk. The best one, and Kathy and I use it as well, I wonder about. That's your best sentence stem. What do you wonder about? And I don't have any answers to that, but they wonder about so many things when they experience a book. And whether we say I imagine or I wonder, it leads into that speculation and the puzzles. So that's a graphic organizer I put into the chapter on graphic organizers. Next. Thinking stems. Kathy mentioned the thinking stems that she used as well. And I've been in a workshop with Kathy where she shows a visual image. I see we're like-minded, so we're just feeding off each other. And then she picks 3. Here's the 3 that I like. I think you put this on your slide. I think you put, I see, I remember, I imagine. So thinking stems is a great way because you read a piece of text, you show them a visual, you show a video, and I want you to complete these sentences, boys and girls, so they respond independently, and then they share their thinking with others. So when I began teaching, when I went to school many, many years ago, McMurrick Public School, it was always questions after the story. And when I went into teaching, I always looked for the questions after the chapter to chapter. But I moved on from that, and I think thinking stems, and there's different ways of doing it. You can give them 3 stems for them to focus on, and you can give them permission. If you can't think of I remember, then you can pass, boys and girls, or you give them a list like this, and then you have them choose which ones. But I remember moves into text to self connection. I wonder moves into puzzles. So you're moving into the comprehension strategies. Thinking stems works with any book that you're going to share with the kids. Next. I did thinking stem. This was in my thesis. These 16 words changed my thinking. It was my research, because I put this on the board one day and I said, boys and girls, is this a poem or not? And what does this poem invite you to think about? So I didn't have thinking stems then. I left at that time. We're always learning and borrowing from each other. This poem makes me feel like the blue jay on the fence looking at the snow on the ground. That was Shannon. She moves totally into empathy. Heidi says, this poem makes me think of my cottage and watching my grandpa feed peanuts to the birds. Georgette has a question. Why did the blue jay choose to go to that backyard? What else is taking place in the backyard? Ricky, his response, this poem makes me feel glad about birds. Birds are the most colorful animals in the world. And I love this little kid. Some parts I don't understand. 16 words. Some parts I don't understand. Because other birds can be a piece of sky. He's well. And listen what this 10-year-old rascal said. We are a little piece of the earth, and he is a little piece of the sky. So this was a monumental moment in my research because I showed the kids that you can, whatever you say matters. You can talk about birds, you can talk about your grandfather in the cottage, but it also helped me assess the students' learning. So that's an example of thinking stems. You can use it with a picture book or this short poem by Siv Settering. Next. Assumption guide I put in every book too. We do a lot of work on bullying, obviously. Most bullies have friends. Do you agree? Are you unsure or disagree? Ignoring bullies will make them go away. Boys usually bully more than girls. Cyberbullying is not a school problem. Agree, unsure, disagree. Once a bully, always a bully. And of course, whatever answer they put down is validated. You don't judge them, but it builds a discussion in the classroom. Assumption guide is a great strategy. In my new book, my assumption guide is about gender equity. Next. So favorite books. Oh, I got to be very careful because I just want to show you something. Look at this book, my favorite book in the whole wide world. You don't need a lesson plan. The title is there. Boys and girls, what's your very favorite book in the whole wide world? And so Tuesday, we're going to meet the kids. You got till Friday to bring in your favorite book and retell the story. This boy in this story he doesn't like to read, and he's actually very stressed by this teacher assignment of bringing in his favorite book. A great book there. Next, I'm just going to show you some slides of covers. This is a great gift if you're a supply teacher. If you come to Earth, Sophia Blackall gives you a great lesson, page 1. So I use this in making predictions. Dear alien creature, if you come to Earth, here's what you should know. And you can choose a topic. Here's what you should know about reading, about school. Here's what you should know about the pandemic. Here's what you should know about video games. And every kid can write a letter if you come to Earth. Next. And this one I put in the comprehension, and just looking at the cover, let's look at the comprehension strategies, visualizing. What pictures do you see? Why is those shadows of the people holding hands there? What is a water protector? Activating prior knowledge and experience. This picture book won the best book of the year, the Caldecott. It's a gem of a book that looks at nature, indigenous identity, and of course, water protection. Next. Wish Tree, you need to read aloud. What book are you reading aloud to your kids? Because I'm going to check if you've read Wish Tree. It's a must read. This tree brings the community together. Next. I'm on a mission to get every grade 5, 6, 7 teacher to read Ghost Boys. On page 1, a black boy is shot by a white policeman, and he goes up into heaven, and he meets other black boys who were harmed or killed, and obviously they're in heaven, and he's looking down at this white policeman's trial. So I shared that with a grade 5 teacher, and she said, Larry, we all cried. She did it as a virtual experience. You must read Ghost Boys. Next. Ground Zero, you've got to read this book if you're 6, 7. Alan Gratz Road Refugee. Ground Zero takes place in 9/11, September. I'm getting so excited. September 11th, Ground Zero. And what's interesting, he does this brilliantly. Every other chapter is in Afghanistan in the year 2020. It's very, very tense because this boy is caught in the crumbling towers of Ground Zero. I couldn't get through a workshop without mentioning some books. But let's look at the strategies that go with them. And this one moves into text-to-self connection. Reading better is a lifelong process. It's our responsibility, challenge, and joy to make reading come alive for our students by introducing them to picture books, novels, poetry, nonfiction. In the end, students are agents of their own learning. They are the agents of their reading lives, but we guide them and we lead them to read, read, read. Our ultimate goal is to lead them and engage them with the passion of reading. And one more quotation. Let us remember, one book, one pencil, one child, one teacher can change the world. I hope I have 60 more seconds. I have one more book. I just bought this on the weekend by Peter Reynolds. Be you. And I can't do it justice by not looking at the pictures, but Kathy Lundy could have written this book. Kathy Lundy did write this book in her slides. So he gives you advice, and the book is Be You. My wish, so this is our wish for you. Kathy and I wish you this, no matter where you are. Here's the words of Peter Reynolds. My wish for you, no matter where your journey leads you, is for you to always, and he goes through 20 pages, is for you to always be you, be ready, be curious, be adventurous, be connected, be persistent. And that was your question, Lionel. What do you do if you had a day? And Reynolds says, keep going, never stop. Keep going, never stop. Keep going, never stop. Be persistent. Be different. Be kind. Be understanding. Be brave. Be your own thinker. Be okay being alone. Be patient. Be okay reaching out for help. So our wish for you in this little chat is to wish for you, no matter where your journey leads, and it's an exciting journey, it's so exciting, is for you to always be you. Thanks for listening to us today.
Thanks, Larry. That was great. I know we're almost out of time, but we have, I know, a lot of young teachers on, and Kathy's joining us as well. And I think maybe it's something that, I'm not sure if this is a fair question, but I'm going to ask it because I feel like I know you know, Larry. And that is, you said 25 years of teaching, a bunch of years now at OIZ. How do you keep the passion going? I mean, you've got people who's starting their career. You could be going into day one right now, and the excitement. How do you do that?
Kathy's last slide said it, and our mentor, David Booth. If you want to be good, surround yourself with people who want to be good. And that has been my career. I've been so lucky to work with great principals, PALS, to work with staffs. I've maintained some good friendships. At OIZ, you find people who are like-minded and people who challenge you as well. And that's where I get the passion. I love professional development. There was one more slide. Oh my God, my last slide. I have a new book coming out next month. Deepening in class and online learning. That's new for Larry. I taught virtually this year. Jim Strachan, I taught virtually this year. And we did dance. You got to come to my dance workshop. But I think it's finding new ways and taking those risks. And that's how I continue the passion. Those are my two books. Teaching Tough Topics look at social justice and equity. And next month, Deepening in Class and Online Learning. That was my last slide. But the one we were chatting about today, you saw the cover, Better Reading Now. Thank you.
Which is that one right there.
Yeah.
Kathy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just
what keeps the passion going after well, I'll say we're at the other end of our career right now, but for those coming in,
I think it's the relationship that you have with your kids. All sorts of things go on in education politically, there's all sorts of stuff that goes on, but basically, your relationship that you establish with your class, your kids, that's what keeps you going, because they need you, you need them, they respond. There's nothing like teaching for me. I think that's what it's the emotional. Teaching for me is about the heart. It's about falling in love with your kids. It takes a while, but eventually, even the ones that challenge you do respect and love in the end. I know you're not allowed to use the word love in education, but I mean it
it's
in terms of, fighting for them, advocating for them, not, the whole equity thing is another, just being aware of the kids that struggle to come to school and to have books to bring in.
Yeah.
You know, some of them don't have much, so you got to
Yeah.
be there for them.
Yeah, yeah, and I think earlier on in our session, Jesse asked about how do you build those relationships with large classrooms, and I think you kind of captured it there, that it's not one day. It's the year, and probably in the school it could be multiple years, but each day matters in building that relationship just a little bit more. And I think that's really what both of you have been talking about over the last hour or so.
I mean, when I taught high school, I taught 180 kids a day. So,
Yeah.
but one of the ways in which I got to know them individually took a lot of time, was to set up interview times with them before, during, after school. Took a lot of time, but I tell you, it was so worthwhile.
Yeah. And as well,
because they told you things about themselves you wouldn't be able to get.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And is also, for high school, if there's, new high school teachers there, I always sort of thought, the battle is won in the hallways sometimes, not the classrooms, right? It's when you remember them in the classrooms, it's all of a sudden, wow, that matters, right? So, yeah. Larry, just before we close off here, I'd like to sort of leave it to the end to both of you for any closing thoughts. Larry did mention about his book list handout. In the tabs up at the top of your right hand of your screen, you'll see chat, polls, handouts. I've released that, so you just have to click on that and be able to download the Word file for his book list. There's also the offer for $5 off for either Kathy or Larry's book. The code I put in there is SNT21. So if you put that in when you go to checkout, the discount will be applied there. I would welcome every one of you to join us next Thursday, on the 26th, where we'll be having another webinar on teacher wellness with Lisa Bush and Cara Diamond and Pat Trottier. Looking forward to more of a panel discussion on a very important topic that's been woven in today, but not necessarily discussed directly. So, please feel free to join us there. So with that, I'd just like to pass it back over to Larry and Kathy and let you both close us out here for this evening.
Well, one thing I can say, Kathy and I wrote a book called Creating Caring Classrooms, which is one of the themes today. And it's not revolutionary, but we came up with a C's model. So you got to build community. And we're very lucky in drama that we build social interaction. Number 2 was communication. How do we invite the kids to communicate, not just with the teacher, not with the person beside them, but how do we invite them to reveal what's going on inside their head? And they communicate through talk, they can communicate through writing, and hooray for the arts. And collaboration, that group skill stuff is hard work. That really matters. Social emotional learning really matters. And our 4th C is compassion. So let's move into emotional learning and emotional literacy. So we would both share that message because we wrote that book. Our 5th C is confronting the bully issue, and Kathy wrote a beautiful thing. You can't ever pretend to confront the bully issue unless you have communication, collaboration, and compassion. You got to do all those things before you can even build those relationships. Right, Kath?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to read you the end of my book, because I fought with my editor about how I wanted it to read. So I'm just going to read you the last paragraph. And she finally burst into tears and said, yeah, you're right. It was great. Because it's, I am at the end of my career. Teaching has been, I write, one of the most joyful aspects of my life. And I'm confident that it will bring you joy. You may find the beginning years challenging, but you will also experience moments of delight and inspiration. Staying the course will enable you to make a real positive difference in the lives of your students and indeed the world. So I encourage you, take a deep breath, stand up, teach.
Thank you. And with that, we'll again, thanks on behalf of everyone, Kathy and Larry. It was a great session. As you can see from the chat comments, others are saying the same. So have a good evening, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Good luck on that first day.
Yes, have a great career. Yeah.
See ya. Bye.
Take care, everyone.